Hi, I'm Norm Abram. Welcome to the new Yankee Workshop. It's hard to imagine a kitchen today without an island. So in our continuing mini-series on the shop-built kitchen, we'll deal with that important element. Except instead of building cabinets meant to be painted, we're going to feature some beautiful river-recovered long-leaf heart pine and butcher block. There's a lot going on the island. Next, right here in the new Yankee Workshop. Okay, I can make that work. Now I've already built the carcass for the island using the same techniques that I used building all the other carcasses for the kitchen. Using the pre-finished 3/4 inch plywood, connecting all the intersections with rabbets and dados, using plenty of screws and glue. Now this is where the advantage of building a custom kitchen pays off. This cabinet does not exist. You have to build it. You could buy 3 cabinets. You could have this one, another one here, and a third one here. But you see all the intersections. By building it as one piece, it's going to look a lot better, and it's very strong. Now let me show you what's happening on this island. Here, we're going to have the microwave. And it isn't one with a hinged door. It's actually a drawer that pulls out. Doesn't tip down. The drawer front pulls out. There are low sides. You access it from the top to stir and place items in and remove them. And when you don't need it, you just push it in to close it. Underneath, a nice big opening for yet another storage drawer. Now there'll be no toe kick on this piece. I want it to look like furniture. It'll just be a simple base that wraps around. The whole piece is going to be built out of heart pine, beautiful heart pine. This will be a large panel, and we're really going to feature the wood. Here we have trash storage, and we'll build a sliding tray to hold this wastebasket. Very heavy-duty hardware, so when you push on it, it's not going to distort it. Here, a narrow opening for some tray storage with a small door. On the end, another panel. Over here on the back, another one, beautiful heart pine. A solid piece to make this turn, and then one more panel. The top is going to be covered with 1.5 inch thick butcher block, 3 feet wide. It'll run over these cabinets and then extend out, and it'll be supported by a couple turned legs out of that heart pine, which we'll be making later. There'll be plenty of room for seating, as well as a good place to store the stools. Now I've already made the face frame for the microwave end. Here it is. I'm letting it stick over the side of the cabinet a bit. This heart pine sometimes wants to move around, so I want to have it be able to do that. The opening for the microwave, the drawer, and you notice this is a really wide style. We have a need for electrical supply and switches, so we can cut a box in right here. Now if you'd like to build an island like this one, a video will be available, and you'll hear more about that before the program ends. First thing I want to do today is attach this face frame. Now just as with the other cabinets we've built, we're trying to minimize the use of mechanical fasteners. I'm using biscuits and glue to attach this face frame. And that's really important with this piece because it's going to have a natural finish. We don't want to see any fasteners. Now the material, as I mentioned, is heart pine. And it's a very good quality of heart pine. Most of it's quarter sawn, which means it's less likely to expand and contract. We'll get this set in position and apply some clamps. Now one thing that I do is I make sure that when I build the carcass that everything is perfectly square, as well as the face frame. It's going to make it a lot easier to fit all the other elements. Here's a piece of our heart pine that we got from our supplier in Florida. It came to us a little over 3/4 inch thick, and it's been surfaced on both faces, and the edges are still rough. Now George gets these logs from the bottom of rivers. They went to the bottom of the river maybe 100 years ago as they were going to the sawmill. And they sit at the bottom as long as they're underwater. They don't rot. There's a lot of pitch in this wood which preserves it. He brings them up, slabs them out, dries them, and gives us this beautiful wood. Now, I want to start working on the panels that I have to make. And I want those to be 1/2 inch thick. They're going to fit in a 3/4 inch thick frame with a 1/4 inch groove, and I don't want them to stick on the back side of the assembly. So I've jointed one face and then run it through the surface planer. I've picked boards that are very similar in color. I want these to look really nice. As you can see, the edges need to be cleaned up, and I'll do that at the joiner, and then I'll remove any defective material. Now, before we use any power tools, let's talk about shop safety. Be sure to read, understand, and follow all the safety rules that come with your power tools. Knowing how to use your power tools properly will greatly reduce the risk of personal injury. And remember this, there is no more important safety rule than to wear these safety glasses. Well, now that I'm satisfied with the joints, I've marked out for some biscuits. Not necessarily for strength, more for alignment. If I put the biscuits in and can get these surfaces even, I'll have less sanding to do later. This heart pine is very gummy and it clogs up the paper. Now, there is a technique to make sure the slots are in the right place. I want to make sure that this plate of my plate joiner is flush on top of the surface of the board. I don't want it tipped back or forward because that will change the location of the slot. Down tight and very deliberate, moving the blade in. Now you can see how nicely the surfaces align. Nice and even. Now when I clamp, I don't want to use too much pressure, just enough to pull it together. I don't want to bow the panel. We'll now just set this aside to dry, and we have a special face frame to make for our island. Here are the elements for the face frame we're going to build next. On the right side, we're going to have a panel assembly. The stiles and rails will get grooves to receive the panel, as well as tenons that I'll form on the ends of the rails. Over here I have the pieces for the face frame, which will create the opening for the trash storage and the tray storage. And they'll get assembled with pocket screws. And then this face frame gets attached to the panel with more pocket screws. Here's the setup to make those grooves. The dado is at a 1/4 inch width and a 1/2 inch height. And I have a feather board here to keep the stock tight against the fence as I run it through. I've set the fence to get the groove as close to the center as possible. But as I run it through, I'll run it through on one side and then turn it around and run it through again. And that'll guarantee that that groove is centered. Now for the tenons. I've widened the dado, installed this stop block to control the length of the tenon, and I use my miter gauge to guide it through. 2 passes forms the tenon. Test our fit. That's good. Slip fit, that's what we want. Well, now is a good time to sand the panel nice and smooth. It's not going to take much. I'm going to start with 150 grit and then switch to 220 because this is going to have a natural finish. I want a nice smooth surface. Now I have to rabbet the back of the panel on all 4 sides to fit into that groove. The dado is still set up at about 5/8 of an inch. I've installed my sacrificial fence now because part of that blade is under the fence, and I'll run each edge. When I made the panel, I cut it a little undersized. I want to have room for it to expand and contract, but I don't want it to slip around freely. So by putting in these little rubber balls, it'll keep it centered, yet allow it to move. I'm installing 3 of these along each side and 2 at the top and bottom. I'll now glue on each tenon and in the stiles, the groove. I'll slip these in and then we'll drop in the panel and put the other side on. Okay. And now the clamps, and then I'll set this aside. Here I'm drilling pockets to assemble the lightweight frame. This jig holds the piece in position while I cut the pocket using this step drill. This drills the pocket, that drills the pilot hole. I just clamp the pieces together and drive the screw home. Now, even with these lightweight frames, this is a really strong joint, and it's quick to make. Now I just connect the lightweight frame to our panel assembly using the same techniques. At this point, I want to dress up these panels with some applied molding. And this is the same profile that I used on the painted cabinets, a bit of an OG and then a chamfer on the outside edge. I made that molding with my router table and a couple different bits, but I have a new molding machine which will do a similar job. Here it is set up. I've removed the dust collection, and you can see in here that there's a knife. It's actually got two profiles, one on each side. The manufacturer will make any knife profile that you want. They're mounted in this head, which turns at a very high rate of speed. There's another motor which drives or pushes the stock through the machine. It's variable speed, and that's a real nice feature. The bed is made out of MDF, and it has these clamp downs. I have a straight piece on one side and this curved piece which acts like a featherboard, pushing the stock straight against this side. Now, because we're using longleaf pine, my blank starts out as a piece of that pine, a little over 3/8 of an inch thick, inch and 13/16 wide. When I bring it in, I just set it against this side and let the feeder grab it, and it'll run it through, cutting a profile on each side. Then I'll rip out the individual pieces at the table saw. Now, with other panels in this project, the ones made out of MDF, I glued the molding to both the frame and to the panel. However, with this longleaf pine, I only want to glue it to the rails and stiles. That panel has to be free to move. At this point, I want to seal the back side of the panels. I want to seal both sides of the panel. The outside will get polyurethane later, but a quick way to seal the inside is just to use some shellac. Well, while that shellac dries, I'm going to start working on our trash storage unit. I'm going to build a box with a bottom that'll set on some drawer slides, and that'll allow the basket to come in and out. I'll also build a box that will be upside down, sort of like a wooden donut, to keep the top from tipping over. So what I've done is taken some of my pre-finished drawer stock, which is already edge banded, ripped it to a 4.5 inch width, and with my dovetail jig, I'm going to dovetail all 4 corners of each box. Those dovetails go together just fine. Now I need to make a groove in all 4 pieces for this 1/2 inch thick bottom, which is also pre-finished plywood. So I've set up the dado to match the thickness of the plywood, and I'll put a groove in each piece. Now I'll just slide the bottom of the lower box together and add the last side. For the last several minutes, I've been working on the box that will contain the upper part of the wastebasket. Dovetail together on the corners just like the bottom. There's no groove, however, there is a series of cleats that will support a 1/2 inch top, which I've already fitted, and I wanted that to be absolutely flush with this top edge. So any debris that misses the basket won't get trapped. It can easily be wiped off. Now every wastebasket is different. So I've taken a piece of scrap 1/4 inch plywood and roughed out a template. The basket is going to sit on the lower box. The top one is only going to keep it from tipping over. So now I can bring the template back to my top, trace it, and then we'll cut it out. Now here I'm connecting the lower box to the upper box with a couple pieces of pre-finished half-inch plywood, and I'll attach those with screws. There'll be one at the front and one at the back. The last thing I want to do tonight is install this top panel. I've put glue in there. Just bring it down and put some clamps on it as necessary. Tomorrow we'll install the hardware for this, make the front, wrap the rest of the base with panels, and then go to the lathe and turn a couple legs. Well, it took a while, but I completed building the remaining panels that are going to wrap the island. I also took the time to make the door for the trash drawer, as well as the drawer that's going to go under the microwave. I attached the frame that we made earlier to the carcass with biscuits and glue, no mechanical fasteners. I want to start today by completing the trash drawer. So the first thing I want to do is apply this bead molding that you've seen me make earlier around the inside of the face frame. I'll simply apply some glue and attach it with pins. The advantage of the pins is that they're so small that they barely show, and they're on the edge of the case. Well, now I want to install the drawer runners, or slides, and they're extra heavy duty. They'll support 100 pounds. These are going to be the hardest working slides in the entire kitchen. And they simply sit on the bottom and get attached to the side with a few screws. One of the things I like about this manufacturer is that they've given me plenty of locations for the screws. Now, if I pull the slide out, you can see that at the back end there's this pin, and that engages with the drawer to keep it from tipping out when it's opened. So over here we have the trash drawer. I've made a notch for the runner, and now I need to drill the hole to receive that pin. I could measure for it, but I also have this jig that I can get from the manufacturer. It simply sets in place, and there's a guide for my brad point bit. It's all about the jigs. Now, once again, I use another portion of the jig to drill the pilot holes for the screws, which will attach these locking devices to the front of the drawer. Let me just slide that in. Well, now the acid test. Just drop it on the runners, slide it till it engages, right there. Pull it out. That's good. Now let's see what happens when I lean on the front of it. Oh, yeah. That's good solid hardware. I think it's going to work fine. Now I want to attach the door to the drawer box. Now first I sized the door. I made it 3/16 of an inch smaller than the opening, and I want to center it so I get a nice even margin, and that can be tricky even though there's some adjustment in the slides. First I want to decide where the attachment points will be. I want to get a screw here, one here, and a couple at the top. So I've marked those on the back side of the panel. Now I want to drill some holes, actually counterbores, at the drill press with this Forstner bit. The next thing to do is to install these little marking devices that I got from the manufacturer. They just drop in those holes. And now I take the whole door, bring it over to the case, and just slowly raise it up to make sure those stay in place up against the drawer box. Now I want to center the door, so I have these little wedges, which I can raise it up a little bit, and then shift it side to side, get it pretty much centered, and I just push in wherever there's one of those dowels. Now take a look. I've got 4 perfectly located marks. Now I can drill a through hole. The next part of the system is this insert, this nylon piece with a metal insert that's threaded to receive a machine screw, which we'll use to attach the whole front. I simply set it in place, drive it flush. Now I can attach the front to the box. Now we just drive it home. Now Now, after a few fine-tuning adjustments to the runners, I think we've got it just about perfect. The last element to install on this side of the island is the door for the tray storage. It's a simple piece of pine. It's actually a glue-up, 2 pieces. I didn't have a piece wide enough to make this door. And I also wanted very good quarter-sawn wood so that the door will stay straight and true and not warp. I have a stop behind the face frame, so it'll stop in exactly the right position. I've sized it just a little bit smaller than the opening. And I'll attach it with these non-mortise hinges. This large wing goes on the face frame, and this piece attaches to the back of the door. Okay, now that takes care of that door. Now, we mentioned earlier that there's going to be a butcher block top on the island. It will sit on these cabinets and be bolted from down below. It's going to come out another 4 feet or so. There are no cabinets underneath it, so we're going to support it with some turned legs like this one. Now, on top of the leg, there will be this element, which will be bolted to the leg from the top, and then that assembly will be bolted to the butcher block from underneath. Let me show you how I turn this leg. Here we have the blank for the leg, another piece of that antique heart pine. The top of the leg is going to remain square at 4 3/4 inches. All the turning will take place down here. I've knocked off the corners with my bandsaw to reduce the amount of material that I have to remove. I'll start rounding it using a gouge. As a guide for the turning, I'm using a drawing from a leg that I made for a table several years ago. Now, the leg for the island is going to be longer, so I'm just using this as a guide, as a rough guide. I first want to lay out some of the transitions where the turnings occur. Now I'm going to turn to a parting tool and my caliper. This will get me to the right diameter. Well, turning takes a little bit of experience, but it sure is fun. Now, I know when I have to move this island into the kitchen that I'll be able to get it in there because there's a nice big sliding glass door to get it through. However, I can't get it into the paint shop. The door's not wide enough. So it's a good thing it's a nice day outside today. We can work on it out here. Now, the finish is a satin polyurethane, an oil-based polyurethane. And what it's going to do is protect this wood, but more importantly, it's really going to bring out the beauty of this pine. I mean, look at how it pops out as soon as the urethane goes on. I think 3 coats should take care of it. Boy, that looks nice. And here's the finished product with the maple butcher block top installed, sitting on those turned legs, which gives us plenty of room for seating on this end. The river recovered longleaf pine looks great with 3 coats of polyurethane, and it goes nicely with this longleaf reclaimed pine floor. On this end, we have the microwave, which is everything we hoped it would be. Seems to be functioning fine, and it's going to be a lot safer to use than having a door to open. Plenty of storage down below. And over on this side, probably the drawer that's going to get used the most, this trash storage area. And that hardware is working nicely. I'm glad we had room for this narrow cabinet for cutting boards and some wooden trays. And everything seems to be just the right height. I have a feeling that this is going to be an island that everybody's going to want to visit. Now let me tell you what we're going to do next time. It's the wet bar with its own distinctive look. No painted cabinets here. We'll be building the bar out of solid cherry and cherry veneer plywood. We have to make room for a bar sink. a wine cooler, and plenty of storage for the champagne glasses. That'll be next time right here in the New Yankee Workshop. If you've enjoyed this New Yankee project, you may want to try some of the others. There are projects meant for the workshop, the garden, the kitchen, and many more. So whether you're a fan of shaker style, or colonial, arts and crafts, or Chippendale, there may be a Norm project you'd like to build. Whether it's a clock or a gazebo, a picnic bench or a Windsor chair, a child's toy or a sailboat, visit the New Yankee website at www.newyankee.com for a complete listing.